He's like a special treat because no one, like the character of Danny Tanner, which is like the most effeminate father figure on television ever created, and being able to make that character come to life, that's just, not anybody can just do that. Somebody has to have that in their heart.
First of all, Robert Reed, a.k.a. Mike Brady, would like a word because that was a Queenie-ass dad.
Welcome to Keep It, Cricket Media's show about pop culture and politics and what happens when they smack into each other at an alarming speed. I'm your host, Ira Madison III, a television writer and Fall Out Boy fan.
I'm Louis Virtel. I'm a TV writer and Jane Fonda historian.
And I'm Aida Osman. I'm a TV writer and alleged comedian.
Let's get into it.
And we're back. I am Louis Virtel, now the sole survivor of Keep It. I've successfully eliminated all of my competition. You will remember last week that Aida Osman, our friend, host of Keep It, was here. She has to attend to personal matters for the next couple of weeks, so she is gone yet again. I know it seems like she's negging you, the incel community, but she's not. I swear she will be back. But today I have two of just my all-time favorites here, including last week's co-champion of Keep It, Guy Branum. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear it because you need to be here. And also, my dear friend, Solomon Georgio, a returner to Keep It himself. I'm so thrilled you guys are both here. Welcome to the show.
Happy to do it.
Beloved dirty stand-up turned sitcom dad Bob Saget died at the age of 65, very unexpectedly. As soon as news of his passing dropped, comedians from every generation began sharing their stories. And frankly, I knew they would. There's something always about a funny person passing away where I can expect hearing not just funny stories about them, but how like they have a very particular special bond with the people they worked with for years, ran into on the road for years. And I just wanted to talk with you two about what the fuck that is. What is this like familial thing that necessarily happens between comedians? Is it always a good thing? Do you experience it yourself?
Yeah, I feel like there's the bond that we have is that we feel like we experienced the trenches of starting stand-up, which is truly a hellscape that only comedians understand. So whenever we lose one, it's such a big impact, especially somebody who no one has anything mean to say about. Which is always impressive for a male comic, especially.
Yeah, I mean, Solomon, I don't know how many experiences you had with Bob Saget. I only really had one, but the really cool thing about it was also a situation where he and John Stamos were working together again and seeing like their rapport and charm with one another and how much they loved each other was really lovely. But the thing I will say about Bob Saget is like, he made the dirtiest jokes and he made the meanest jokes, but he also had a sense of like stand-up should come with a sense of humility because you're gonna fail. And he always had that sense of humility. And there's just such a difference between somebody taking a dig at someone or something, mm-hmm. but being able to just sort of say like, that was a joke and not need to turn it into a lifestyle or a philosophy, which I think is really what saved him. Also, just being so funny. Like, the thing is when you're a level of funny, when you have a level of confidence with the work that you're doing, you don't necessarily need to, like, double down on HGH or anti-vaxxing or how trans people aren't people.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think, like, for me, I think people, like, they do such a big juxtaposition from his role as Danny Tanner to his stand-up. And I think that person exists in both. Like, you can have those characteristics in one person. Somebody who will tell the filthiest, grossest jokes and still be able to portray an amazing dad because he has those aspects. And I think that's like, for me, I will always. There's always gonna be that camaraderie, but I also like him. He's like a special treat because no one, like the character of Danny Tanner, which is like the most effeminate father figure on television ever created. And being able to make that character come to life, that's just, not anybody can just do that. Somebody has to have that in their heart.
First of all, Robert Reed, a.k.a. Mike Brady, would like a word because that was a Queenie-ass dad. And you can look at the way he is an architect, just for starters.
Very true, but he was
straight
raising
lines
boys.
Alone. That's true. That's true. That's true. Well, actually, what's interesting to me is, as you said, people are describing the juxtaposition of who he was on Full House with who he was as a comic. But honestly, you can sort of see the layers in Full House. Like, he's being very sweet, but there's always something registering in his eyes, like a note of cynicism or a note of resignment. And it reminds me of what's coming to mind is like John Arbuckle from Garfield. It's like, you know, I'm doing my best with these rascals, but gulp, I'm who I am. You know?
It's that little bit of edge that, say, maybe other stand-up comedians who were in the cast of Full House weren't bringing to the table because they were too busy with puppets.
Now, Mr. Woodchuck, I know you love anything with wood in it, but please, let's just stick to the story. That's fine with me.
But a weird thing about stand-up is, like, we lose a lot of people. We have lost a lot of people to suicide. We have lost a lot of people to drugs. We have lost a lot of people to, you know, the random things that kill people. Was my weird mix of emotions about the fact that this dude died in a Ritz-Carlton in Florida, which is, like, on the one hand, this very sort of, like, sad, he died alone, you know, and you're very much sort of like, which of these is going to take me? When Brody Stevens took his own life, there was a little bit of me that was like, will this be me one day? And when Bob Saget died in a Ritz-Carlton in Florida, it was like, will this be me one day? But there's also this way that it's like, he died with his sword in his hand.
Yeah,
in this very sort of like interesting way where I can't see it as sad because, like, he had, like, children and a wife and family and all of that. But there's also something so beautiful that this other part of his life was built up. And, like, his last tweet was about how much he was loving the process of being on stage again. Solomon, like, what are your feelings when these things happen?
It is so sad, but it's also, like, especially something like him, like, he has a legacy that's gonna last forever, and that's kind of what we all want as comics. Is like, even regardless of how we pass away, we want our impact to be stronger than our death, and he managed to do that. He managed to be one of the few comics to become such an insane multi-hyphenate that we can't even fully consider him just a stand-up comic anymore. He's literally more than that. So that's why I think that's one thing we all want, is just to leave this world with an impact that will last forever.
It's fucking crazy that his last tweet is him being like, I just realized how much I'm appreciating this moment of what I do. I mean, it was like the end of a movie written by Nicholas Sparks or something. You know, it reminds me of one of my old favorites who I bring up a lot. I'm sure I've discussed her with guys several times, but Cass Elliot, like minutes before she died, was on the phone with Michelle Phillips, fellow mama of Mamas and the Papas, saying she had just gotten a standing ovation and couldn't believe how well her concert went. It's like, I'm not saying I want you to die after something like that happens, but there is just something so poetically satisfying to my simple mind about things like that, you know?
But, I mean, Louis, to sort of like the broader question you were asking about, like, camaraderie and stand-up, is there is this way that you feel bonded to these people, or that you have a set of experiences that you share and you just understand them. And there's also this way that, like, we within our community are constantly sharing in this very strange way. Like, the vast majority of the time I learn about Solomon's life, you know, sometimes it is at a bar, but a lot of the time it is just from a joke that he is telling or something like that. And you, like, know these people and you have such a strange relationship with them. But one of the things that has been really hard and complex over the last couple of years is the conditional status that's given to some people within that world. The frequency with which, you know, women or queer people who push back within stand-up suddenly aren't comics anymore. Like, we have this friend who sort of, like, had a tussle with a more established comic, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, and you know, he's somebody who figured out that he made a mistake, and so I'm not going to say his name, but in all of it, he was referred to as a comic and she was referred to as a blogger. And, like, this is a comic who was running shows and running mics and doing more to keep the comedy world alive than that dude was at that point in time. And it just kind of kills me that kind of solidarity that I give so lovingly to so many of these people can be conditionally denied to people like me.
I agree, but I feel like there's always going to be gatekeeping in this wonderful world of ours, but we're defiant, which I think is nice, and we also have people that are also up top that do a great job of making sure that we're still considered stand-ups.
Is it annoying to kind of have to be quote unquote grateful to the people who basically reach out and make sure you feel like a human member of the community just because you're black or gay or something, and needing someone from the top? Like, I don't know, like for years, just for example, on Twitter, you know who's always retweeted me? I mean, it's a simple gesture, who cares? But like Patton Oswalt, a part of me is still in my mind thinking, oh, that's so nice of him. It's like, I mean, and it's not nice of him, but why am I like grateful? It's like, no, I'm fucking funny. Why wouldn't you retweet me? Anyway, but it's one of those things where you grow up thinking like, as a queer person, like, all right, a part of me is always a little bit of like, not embarrassing to straight people, but like a little bit much for them. And so when they reach out to you and, you know, make you and say to other people, oh, this person's funny, it feels not just like, I think this is funny, but advocating for something that you might be uncomfortable with. And it's like, but anyway, I just think that's like a weird, like self-deprecating thing I go through sometimes dealing with other straight funny people.
Yeah, I'm looking up the definition of the word grateful. I don't think I've ever attempted it, but I'll give it a try one day.
The thing is like when I started many, many years ago, like the system was so man to man that I can't help but be grateful. You know, I can't help but be grateful of the like straight guys who are broad-minded enough to think that they could take a woman they're not having sex with on the road, or a gay person on the road. And also, like, it was a time when so many of the gay men who were working were just like, there's only enough room for one, that they didn't have this space in their minds or hearts to be generous with stuff like that, which is why I'm so much more grateful to someone like Wanda Sykes, who has just been consistently present for women, people of color, and queer people, and is like, she and her partner Paige Hurwitz have made a business out of this. And you know, when I get to work, I like being grateful. Like, there's just something, it's just so nice to, instead of focusing on, because there's so much negative to focus on. And because it is, as Solomon said, it's a hard business and there are gatekeepers. And when you find people who are kind enough to be generous, it's just so lovely. And I also think is a reminder, like, you have enough to be generous. In whatever position you are in, you have enough to be generous.
Yeah, I'm on board. I do fully agree. Like I am grateful, but I'm not specifically grateful to anybody straight or male. Like I feel like they should give me, like, in those situations, I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely just as funny as you are. I'm not like, but people who, like, because there is like a lot of the gatekeeping that I've seen is also by people that's fall in the same category as me, where I'm like, that's what I like. I'm definitely, when there's those of us who are still open and willing to like bring on other people, that's what I'm like, this is wonderful to not be mad and angry at the world for making you go through something and therefore having to throw it on other people. That's the kind of situations I despise, and I love it when I don't have it.
Because at the end of the day, like, a certain level of talent allows you to not be bitter. Because you're like, well, I'm going to go be on stage and be funny. And the people who are working hard enough to say, you're not a stand-up, probably aren't that funny and have just been at the club for over 7 years.
Well, it reminded me of how annoying the conversation about the recent Dave Chappelle special was, because he, while delivering, for instance, the turf agenda or whatever was going on there, no one ever said, well, this isn't stand-up. Meanwhile, when Hannah Gadsby had her special and had 3 minutes where she's explaining a terrible event, suddenly people are obsessed with announcing it's a one-woman show and not stand-up anymore. And it's like, why is this distinction important only now?
To be fair, Hannah Gadsby was like, well, I'm not doing stand-up anymore, which kind of pissed me off because it lets everyone have their cake and eat it too. It lets the Chappelle people be like, she's not a real stand-up, and it lets queer people and women like be like smugly like, we're better than stand-up. And it's like, no, I'm exactly as good as stand-up. And it pisses me off a little bit that, look, I was, Nanette impacted me and it made me think about the thing that I do differently, and I really respect it. But it's also like, Jacqueline Novak did a fucking hour of nothing but dick jokes that contemplated women's perspective in this world and what it means to have a body. And that is what makes me happy, is people who are bringing their intelligence and their talent to the table to take this form that I love and is so much fun and fill it with different perspectives that show us our lives differently.
That special is called Get On Your Knees, correct? That's yes. I want to give Jacqueline Novak the full credit there.
For me, it's like anybody who tries to put specific boundaries in the world of stand-up is not a true stand-up to me. That's where I find an issue with. Anyone who says all that's required is you going on that stage and making people laugh. And sometimes that's not even required, honestly. It's just going on that stage, really. But that's essentially what it is. And I'm not going to, I feel like it's just unfair to strip the meaning of what it is based on what your personal definition of what stand-up is. And I don't think it's fair. And I think it's always, if you don't show up to appreciate stand-up with an open mind, then why are you even there, honestly?
Solomon, it sounds like you're sticking your neck out for Che Diaz on And Just Like That, who I believe they have the potential to be funny.
I've only been watching And Just Like That through memes, so I'm not 100% sure.
I'll be honest, I think you got the gist. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Not much nuance left to plumb there, I don't think. Do you guys have just favorite comics you're friends with who you rather unexpectedly ended up friends with?
I mean, like, my oldest school best friend from stand-up is this like Comedy Cellar comic in New York, Louis Katz, who is just sort of like, who disagrees with me about all of this stuff almost, but is like interested and engaged in having conversations. Like, you know, he's basically someone who's always going to tell me that I'm wrong about, you know, the newest Chappelle Hour or whatever, and we'll fight about it, but it's fun and he's interesting and he's smart. And that's why it is really fun, like these times and moments when like someone is talking and thinking and I am hanging around with somebody who gets on stage and just fights with a microphone for 10 minutes or whatever. Like, it is all of these different styles and voices. Our friend Emily Heller once said, it's the most diverse art form I've ever been a part of. And it's just true. Because when you get on stage, whoever is there is in charge. Like Dave Chappelle can command a room when he's behind a microphone. But Aparna Nancherla, the quietest, most retiring, most thoughtful of others human being, is also a cruel tyrant when she is behind that microphone. And I love it.
I just want to say that one time I was at Guy's Seder, which at the time the term had to be basically explained to me. I famously did not meet a Jewish person until I was 18. But I was sat next to Aparna, and this is years and years ago. I don't think I even knew who she was yet. And she wasn't saying much. And I was like doing my like nervously over social thing. And it occurred to me very quickly, this person was legions ahead of me in terms of funny and just like deploying like the softest bombs. And like, it wasn't deflating to me exactly, but I didn't know what I was in for. And I think she constantly delivers that as a stand-up.
The softest bombs is the best way of describing her.
See, my compatriot is Marcela Arguello, and that is that's
queen.
a whole. And there's parts of me that I'm like, we're very similar. I'm like, no, we're not. She is in a different league of like commanding that I wish I could get. But in my head, I am her, but that's not true at all.
She is just very, in addition to funny, strident. Like there's something about her that says like, I actually don't give a fuck. And a lot of people would claim that. And her delivery, and also when you know her radness, her niceness also indicates that, you know?
I, in the dumbest, most depressive New Year's way, DM'd her and came at her about something dumb on Twitter, and she Marcella'd back at me so hard, and then like I just sort of, but with like Marcela Arguello is the kind of comic I respect most, who is the hardest and the kindest at the same time, and it was just like within the past 3 months, the best articulation of what stand-up is what that woman presented me, of not backing down, telling me why I was wrong, and when I apologize, telling me you don't have to apologize. This is just who we are. And I am so grateful. Like, getting to be a stand-up comedian is one of the richest things in my life. I love it like I love my family. I love it like I love being gay. And it's why it's so beautiful to see people reach out with so much love when something tragic like this happens.
And my answer would of course be you two would probably be my answers for like stand-ups I'm happiest to know, but also specifically because like Something that really upsets me is the amount of times you hear in a discussion about why something is offensive or whatever, that quote unquote funny is funny. And that's where the conversation ends. But I think with like the comics I care about anyway, the conversation's never over. It's barely begun. You can always get into it. And like getting into the zeros and ones of comedy is never not fun to me. Staying super articulate and super just aware of what we're doing when we're being funny and who we're appealing to and who we're maybe even leaving out sometimes is like always interesting, because it's never just funny is funny. There's always it's funny to someone and it's not funny to someone, and there's a why. There's always something to learn there and always something interesting.
Of course.
So anyway, thank you for being a part of that conversation.